Stilter. Didn't work. Okay, that won't work this time. Right, we're on the final stretch. 2 fantastic talks coming up. I happen to have already seen this one. A couple of belly laughs for me. Hopefully you share that opinion. We've got Stein up first, then Miles, and then we're into the garden for some beers. So let's have a massive round of applause for Stein, please.
All right. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, actually. Welcome to the Network Automation Big Picture Overview in 2023. Thanks for the applause. Let's see if you're clapping by the end of this. But let's have a quick look at what's going on. This is going to be a low-tech one. There's going to be no code. This is a sit back, relax, observe. This is going to cover something that's already been touched on by all the talks today. So we're just going to run through the big picture. We're going to take it easy. We're going to have some fun, okay? So you're wondering, who's this guy? My name is Stedt Urvad. My friends call me Steinsy, but I'm the lead product development engineer at Advania. This talk is not representative of the opinions of I'm here representing myself, not my company, etc., moving on. So just a little background on me about what I'm talking about. So I'm traditionally a network engineer. Way back in the day, I look a lot younger than I am. So I came up as a CCIE, and then I just this Christmas graduated with my degree in a bachelor's degree in computer science in night school. So shout out to my wife and child for putting up with me, because that stuff is not fun with a full-time job. I do not recommend it. Maybe I do. It depends on who you are. But I'm a Cisco guy, I'm a Fortinet guy, I'm a Juniper guy, and recently I've transitioned into an automation, well, not recently, for the past 2 years I've been focused on automation and development. So, quick overview of the talk. We're going to do an introduction. We're going to go over the automation big picture. We're going to go over something I call Lego orchestration. This is an internal concept. It's not something you buy. It's a way of explaining things and talking about it simply internally. Because I've found that when you're dealing with sales or project management, they like simple analogies. The simpler you can make stuff, the better, the more success you are going to have. And we're going to take a complete detour, imperative versus declarative, infrastructure as code, which has been touched on a lot today. Network automation tier list is kind of a summary of the whole progression that I tend to see with a lot of my friends and colleagues. We're going to end up with talking about tools, tips, and tricks, and conclusions and questions. So, what's the goal of network automation? And I'm going to be saying it depends a lot, because it depends. We have MSPs here, we have ISPs, we have data centers, we have standalone enterprises, we have some Linuxy server type dudes here. Very diverse crowd of, well, not diverse, but very diverse set of interests in the network automation domain, and it's really great to have you all here. So, automation goals, there's a lot of them. I like to focus on these 2. These are my favorite. It actually worked. Yes! Concise versus consistent. So concise definitions of a service and consistent delivery of the service. Now, we want it to be concise, since if we don't have concise service definitions, and if you're automating a catalog of services and products that's 20 years old, maybe you need to revisit those products and catalogs, and doing that as a standalone automation specialist is not a great idea. You're going to want buy-in and support from the larger organization as a whole. So if you're going to automate something, you want it to be concise, very clear what you're going to automate, what's the delivery, and that's this whole thing that's been the theme of all the talks today. You're not going to be able to deliver value and demonstrate value unless you have a concise plan of, hey, I'm going to tackle this problem, it's going to solve this issue for this business unit, and it's going to deliver this value. So, lots of other ones there, but those are for reading later. Now, network automation, big picture, and basic components. Network automation, big picture, we have the source of truth, whatever that is. It can be Autobot, it can be a database, it can be NetBox, it can be an Excel sheet. Dear God, I hope not. We have our systems of record, or source of record. I always get those confused. That can be something like ServiceNow, that can be an address catalog, that can be GPS coordinates from sort of other service that you need to synchronize with. Main point being, it's a source of record. More on that in a bit. It's all surrounded by the orchestration automation system. This can be a separate thing. We'll talk about it more in a couple of slides. And of course, telemetry and monitoring is the thing I'll be touching the least on today. We're very config focused. all the talks today. And I understand why. This is the first one of these things, but I'm hoping if this is all very successful, that it will get to touch more on telemetry and lifecycle management and all that stuff in future events like this. So, the source of truth. It's the holiest of holies. It's the heart of the system. It can be Notabot, it can be a database, it can be an Excel sheet, and it can be a NetBox. The source of record, I highly recommend that you focus on your sources of record, like getting data from an address book or a customer list or something like that that's external to your source of truth. If it doesn't fit in the source of truth, or you need to make it fit, do one-way updates. Don't do synchronizations back and forth. It's going to be a nightmare. So you want things to flow into your source of truth, and you don't want to be pushing back and forth. And then because you're going to risk things like update loop managements, and this value is A over here, but it's B over here. Which one is correct? Avoid that. Architect your system from the ground up to avoid these situations. I know it's hard. It's super hard. But trust me, I made this mistake, so I just want to highlight it. The independence of the source of truth is very important. Now, it's not free like free beer. It's free like puppy. So if we get stuff like NetBox and open source projects, you're going to have to couple and integrate and manage that life cycle. And a vendor solution might make a lot of sense for you. It depends. I keep saying that. API first-driven solutions are, of course, a priority because you want something that doesn't have partial functionality in the API, that was grafted on afterwards. I'm not going to pick on any vendors, but having something that was designed for you to access via API from the get-go and not just full compatibility in the GUI, very important. I'm stating a lot of the obvious stuff here. I'm preaching to the choir as it is. But this kind of has to be said, and I wish someone told me about all of this stuff when I started out, so here we are. Quick thing about this, a static long-term system might not be a best fit for an open source hippy-dippy solution like what you might get from an institution or a community like NetBox. If you're doing a power grid that's going to be set up for 20 years and you're doing 20-year life cycles, maybe going full vendor X solution and just locking that thing down because there's not going to be another nuclear power plant in the next couple of weeks might make sense. It depends. Now, user interaction. This is where people see your system. This is where management will judge your little GUI or your front end. And a lot of times you got to make sure that this looks really nice because you're delivering value. You've made sure that everybody knows what you're doing and why you're doing it. But having things look and feel nice is important to the people who use your stuff. So a lot of the stuff that you learn if you go with the education route, do a computer science degree, is user interface design, user experience design. And you learn a lot about making things usable, high affordance, all that type of stuff that we don't have time to cover today. But focusing on the user interaction surface is a very critical component in creating a successful end-to-end automation solution. Because as we've heard today, day 2, people stopped using your automation solution. You created something some people didn't want to use. You got to be careful of this part. Chat ops are really taking off. We've talked about document generation today. This thing keeps on changing, but clearly the most important thing in this is change management. We're going to do changes to the interface, or we're going to do changes to the network. We want the user interface to be simple, direct, and deliver business value. Now, the automation or orchestration component, this can be the same system. It can be multiple systems. It depends. This is where the magic happens, however. And of course, we need to make sure that the state in the network as it is now is as we intended in our source of truth. And this instantiates everything that we want to happen in our network. I have a lot of bullet points on this thing, but we've talked about it a lot today, so I'm not going to hammer this, super hard home. But single vendor options are really, really good in this part. This part is hard, okay? Ansible is hard to use. Got to say what it is, say it how it is. Rollback in Ansible, if you think that's easy, please immediately give me your CV. I will pay you all the money in the world because doing rollback management, multi-vendor, multiple environments, when you're an MSP, a data center, and an ISP all rolled into one, these things are really hard, and there's a reason why it's really good to engage with a vendor, like the fine people at iTential or Network to Code, or I'm probably, I'm forgetting out probably a lot of them. IP Fabric is a really fabulous one, also the sponsors of today. But, main key takeaway I just want to, push here is simplify your offerings. If you're coming in to an organization, maybe the existing infrastructure, the existing way of doing things, the existing products don't lend themselves to automation easily. You're going to need a team of people with you with different backgrounds, different experiences to help you create both going over the service catalog of how we're selling boxes or how we're selling services and making sure that it all makes sense in 2023. Most of this stuff and most of these processes have existed for a very long time in many organizations. So a revamp alongside automation efforts is probably going to be a really good idea. Now, the final key point here is you can't outsource your process creation. I mean, you can bring in contractors. They're going to do a really great job of doing a lot of stuff. But at the end of the day, you should know your business way better than some contractor would. Or you're going to pay them to learn your business, which is a perfectly valid and good model, and that makes sense, especially when it's really hard to hire network engineers / programmers / combo people. Contractors might make a lot of sense, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure that your business processes are simplified, direct, and they lend themselves to automation. Otherwise, the contractor is going to spend all your time going, hey, this product, that, you say you want X, but it has Y in it. What's going on? So, just key points before you engage with someone, make sure that your in-house is kind of in order and you have a direction that you want to go with things in. Telemetry, I mean, there's lots been said about the state of telemetry today. SNMP is still king, in my opinion, but we have things like, of course, we have flow telemetry, so we have streaming telemetry. That's very vendor-specific these days. There are projects going on, maybe the vendors won't save us, maybe the standards won't save us. I'm not an expert on the telemetry part. I have people with me for that, and that's why it's very important to have a diverse team with you, because you can't know everything. But DDoS event handling, ticket creation, that sort of thing is handled in this part. Now, why go through all of this? Well, revenue leakage, if you're an MSP, that's your kryptonite. You really don't want that. We don't want to create silos per se, but we want to have clear contracts and boundaries between, let's say, a shared resource within your organization like billing, or if you have a CRM program like ServiceNow or Salesforce, those resources might be working for multiple business units. They might not, jump when you say jump. So having a clear delineation and boundary between the black box of billing or whatever service that may be, and might be the ServiceNow resources as well. Keeping those APIs clean and clear is where stuff like NetBox comes in really, really handy, because you're able to add extra fields for the billing team on the devices or on the services that you're provisioning. They can read those, translate them into Navision or whatever, SAP, God help you, or whatever else you're using. But multi-vendor support is, of course, also a key issue here. We could go with a single vendor, automation solution. So this is kind of a generic example. This is not something particular, but this is kind of how most things start to look like. You have your resource registration, you have a portal up top where your users, whoever your users are, they might be network engineers, they might be actual customers, we might be going for the self-service route. Self-service is a goal for a lot of organizations, but if you're a prison or a mental institution, maybe you don't want the prisoners assigning their own VLANs. So it depends on who you are. But Ansible is, like most people have talked about today, it's very popular, very in vogue. I mean, it's one of the strongest platforms to use, especially when you're getting started. So again, human error will go down as soon as you start standardizing your processes, as soon as you start delivering consistent and concise services. And human error and variability are the enemy. So what do we really want? We want end-to-end service chaining and orchestration. Now, what do I mean by that? I like to use the exact analogy of a Lego orchestration system, because it's kind of simple and it really works really well. So we have a Lego brick. You can stick a Lego brick on top of a Lego brick, right? You can't put them side to side, they won't fit. It's a pretty nice analogy when we talk about service chaining. So we have our layer 2 access layer that has a layer 3 component. Those are 2 bricks, they put them together, that happen in this MSP side over here. So this is the enterprise, right? And we can stack this together all the way. We put our layer 2, we put our layer 3 or SD-WAN or whatever solution. We have our WAN provisioning circuits. We have our WAN edges in the data center. Moving all the way, we might also have an SD-WAN hub thing going on. All the way to security and eventually client to cloud, client to server, end-to-end systematic explanation of what we're trying to do and how things fit together. And at the end of the day, what is NetBox? I mean, it's a Django web app. It has an ORM, or Object Relational Mapper, which it handles the database part, and it's a really good relational database. So what you have is kind of a Postgres database with an excellent front end, an excellent community, and excellent extensibility and scripting support. That's what you have there. And what we want, of course, is to leverage the relations inside of NetBox and map them to our entire end-to-end service chaining. Now, out of the box, we don't get IPsec tunnels. There's a plugin for that that's been revamped right now. Writing your own and buying plugins is also a really good option. But that's kind of the idea of the Lego orchestration. You can fit the blocks together. It's a really nice analogy when you're dealing with someone non-technical. But now, a complete detour. Let's have some pasta and talk about imperative versus declarative infrastructure as code. So the how versus the what. The how. It's a step-by-step recipe. I know I totally lied when I said there wouldn't be any code, but this is pseudocode, so I technically didn't lie to you. You're welcome. The pseudocode describes how we're going to order pasta. We're going to get the pot. We're going to put this many liters of water in it. We're going to put these noodles from this location. It's very step-by-step. It's very tweakable. We get more control at the expense of flexibility. This is not very flexible. If you're going to change something in there, I mean, I hope you have some sort of CI/CD testing procedure, because I would be scared of going al dente in this model. Now, we get exactly what we want, but we're highly coupled to our actual implementation of the system. I mean, we have just selected heat another pan on the stove and we've set it to medium. What if there's not a medium button anymore? That's what I mean by highly coupled to the interfaces that we're using. What's the alternative to this? And again, we get pasta, which is great. But I don't want my guys knowing about the pots and the pans. I just want them to get pasta. So we're going to go to the restaurant and we're going to focus on the what. We're going to order exactly what we want. We're going to declare it to the waiter. And we're going to say that we want it al dente. And if anyone disagrees with the al dente statement, I will fight you in the parking lot. So help me God. Because who likes soggy noodles? I do not. But as you can see, we have a nice little YAML-like syntax here. We got our extra meatballs, we got our Parmesan, and we set al dente to true, as it should be. Sauce is marinara. Pretty great. Now, this gets into, Ansible versus Terraform. You can do declarative in Ansible and Terraform. Simple fact. It does lean itself to imperative Ansible out of the box, but as long as you use your models correctly and you follow certain procedures, you're going to do just fine. Terraform is super declarative. Like, it came out of the cloud people's camp. So, resources and processes, what's that? I just declare that I want a Django, some sort of server, and then it just magically appears and running my particular software stack, and it's magic. And again, I want my people to have magic. I want them to have simple declarative interfaces that's really easy to work with and easy to modify. So I don't care who the cook in the kitchen is. I just want my pasta. So that's kind of the key difference. Again, if we look at them side by side, we've hidden a lot of complexity under the hood in the declarative model. Okay, there's a lot going on there to make that happen. And when the Kubernetes people show up, and I love me some Kubernetes. I mean, I used it for all my projects in school, big fan. But using Kubernetes and running a Kubernetes cluster or whatever they call it is a completely different proposition. So programmers love that stuff, but there's hidden complexity, there is hidden cost, or you're running your stuff in AWS, in which case, they foot the bill on that complexity, you just get your pasta, we're all friends. But it's a lot easier to work with the declarative stuff, I would think, than it is with the imperative stuff. And it's easier to debug, fewer variables, you're going to have a nicer time. That's kind of my philosophy on the whole thing. Now, the automation abstraction level. Do we focus on the per port? Do we focus on a set of ports? Do we focus on a switch, set of switches, site, set of sites, customer, set of customer? This really depends on what you're doing. But generally, going as high as you can with your automation and your declarative code, targeting the switch instead of the port for declaring a service should be connected to it. And having that information stored in your source of truth or your Git repository or however you're handling it, you want to go up this stack. And I'm a little bit behind, so we got to keep going. Automation journey. All right, we're going to go through the tier list. Bunch of memes, read the memes, very enjoyable, handcrafted. So, -1, welcome, meat-based automation. You are the automation. This has worked well for a millennia. Our forefathers had meat-based automation. You send a ticket, something takes over, it does something, you get your network resources. That's meat-based automation. A lot of speakers today made it sound like nobody has full-on meat-based automation anymore. I think there's some of you in the audience that got a little shaky when we started talking about that. A lot of meat-based automation going on. But you have your ticketing system, you have a wiki that falls out of date immediately as soon as somebody presses a key there and the information just becomes absolutely worthless. You have an operations center or a network operations center you can call in the middle of the night. Massive plus. And you've got a DCIM or IPAM and you're not using Excel anymore. Tier 0, you get the basics. Okay, you're keeping track of changes. Great job, everyone. Rollback plans for changes, and you've got rollback planning for how you're going to roll back in the event of an error. The error will be manually or customer detected. You want to avoid that customer-based detection system because that can be very expensive. Automatic backups at every X interval. Welcome to Tier 0. You're doing great. Tier 1, config templates. You know, you're starting to doing templating. You're doing find and replace on some. You could be doing a web front end, you could have some saved device templates, that sort of thing. You're copy-pasting them inside of change windows in the middle of the night, and you pasted twice, or you didn't paste into router 27. Not a good look. Kind of dangerous. You have to be really awake when you're using this. Maybe it's not bad, but, you know, not automation-y enough for me. Laptop level. Solo scripts that do things really well, but they're kind of tailored to an individual. Each team member has their own shell script that runs on their local machine. There's no auditability on who ran what and where, except on the devices. There's hard-coded passwords and API keys all over the place because, you know, you're just using this for testing. This is totally fine. We're all fun here. You got your rollback handling. No rollback handling, that is. And, of course, if the person quit, he takes his scripts along with him or they become unmaintained and unusable. So, not great. Tier 3, centralized automation environment. Good job, guys. We got user auth. We got 2FA on that centralized automation platform. We got an audit trail. We know who ran what, when, where, at an easily locatable source. We've secured the environment, and there's no hard-coded password anymore. Great. Law and order, Tier 4. We've standardized around a certain framework. Could be AWX, could be whatever. Wonderful choices spoken of today. Most of the things are written in the same language. You know, you're able to simplify your developers' lives, and you have automation you have an automation council of some kind. So there's not just one guy in the corner telling everyone how it should be done, who's usually the oldest CCIE or something like that. You have a diverse group of people working together, coming to an agreement of how to move forward with your automation plans. Really important. More on that later. Tier 5, business process-driven automation, customer relationship management. So, you know, your Slack, your Salesforce, that stuff is driving your automation. You're delivering value to the customer and, of course, your organization, and you're demonstrating it. Good job. You have connected and driven workflows, customer lifecycle management, you know, onboarding, offboarding, really great stuff. Tier 6, the microservices people show up. Okay, great. We start breaking things from standalone VMs into microservices. Again, the Kubernetes, you know, the resume-driven development kind of takes over, but, you know, okay, we need Kube. Great, we'll do Kube. Creating boundaries between the services and the database and blah, blah, blah. Wonderful stuff. Tier 7, less microservices, because we find out that maintaining all of this stuff was kind of insane. And as soon as you start breaking things into microservices, deploying more and more stuff starts to happen, and you don't really audit it as hard, and you bring in new products without really thinking about it. It tends to happen. So we eliminate some of the microservices. There's some link there to an interesting article from Amazon about simplified monoliths, and yeah. Tier 8, the event-driven microservice architecture. If you don't know what any of that stuff means, don't worry. But those people just showed up. They start talking about CQRS and Saga. Somebody mentions RabbitMQ and Kafka. And it starts to get a little bit scary, but somebody's talking about vertical scaling, and everything looks kind of nice, but you're kind of scared, and you need a master's degree to look at router 1 to see if there's a static route. So, okay, cool. Tier 9, we got our AI ops people show up. Chat ops and teams, you're using an LLM tool of some kind to interact with network engineers and management and that sort of thing. And, well, you got the large language model writing your automation code. Anyone see a problem with that? Well, congratulations, you've had Tier FFF. You've gone full Shodan. The automation has taken control of the system. If you're not familiar with Shodan, go play a game called System Shock. It's kind of a documentary about automation gone wrong. Pretty good one. So, lessons learned and recommendations. Get an automation council together. You can't do this on your own. I am so thankful for my automation council. I can speak from personal experience on this, that having someone from the business side and management, along with someone who's representing the programmer resources, along with someone who's representing the network resources, coming to an agreement, working on it together with regular meetings is fantastic. Multidisciplinary. Don't try to do things on your own. You need a team and an approval process. Keep it an odd number, so if you get into a voting situation, there's no deadlock. If there's a deadlock, you should, of course, all be super friendly and agreeing. But another resource, this is from Cisco, so the Network Automation Delivery Model. It covers a really good example of these journeys and the stuff, a good place to start reading is the model and the layout that they represent. It's not, they don't say, hey, you have to install DNA Center in this guide. They don't go, hey, you need NSO. This is a general, how do I deliver value from day one? How do I demonstrate stuff? Super good guide. Highly recommend giving that a browse. Another resource I'd like to recommend, especially if you are struggling with programming or if you're transitioning, is Find. I can't pronounce this, sorry. But unlike ChatGPT and all their LLMs, this one has actual access to the internet. It cites sources to the side and has the latest and greatest API spec information. So, worth checking out. Now, using ChatGPT and NetBox, here's a quick life hack. Don't tell it how to make your plugin. If I want an IPsec plugin, it'll spew out some complete garbage. But if I get it to agree on a pseudocode language, and then I follow that pseudocode language and describe exactly what I want, you're going to get way higher code quality. It's not going to be perfect. Don't trust the LLM. But if you're playing around, wondering how to get things done, using either of these tools is a really great place to start. Yeah, way better results. Not perfect though. Fireship YouTube channel. The LLMs, again, I'm sorry about all the LLM stuff, but I'm legally required to cover this because no one else did. I had these hidden before. But Fireship, great resource, great shorts on YouTube. It covers general AI dev stuff and trends especially, and they come out weekly. So it's a really good place to keep an eye on what's happening in the LLM/developer space. So highly recommend that channel. This book is one of the best ones I read during my university stint, which was the Fundamentals of Software Architecture. If you have no idea what I said, if you didn't understand what I said about microservices and event-driven systems and broker-based blah, 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 this is a great book. It's available on Audible as an audiobook. It's great to listen in the car. It's very relaxed listening. They don't go over your head or too fast. It is a long one, though, so you might want to skip around. Highly recommend. Then we have the continuous delivery book. Now this is the meat and potatoes of CI/CD. It's a little old now, but all the fundamentals are covered in there. And this is kind of the thing that really kicked it off and solidified some of the testing and integration ideas. So, great book. Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob is really great. Now, he's a Java guy, but the ideas are essential, not the language that he's using. So, the Clean Code video series and the Design Pattern series is really good. On Safari books, you can watch them, don't buy them on his website, I'm sorry, but he way overcharges. So watch them on Safari. No affiliation, I'm not getting paid, but go in with an open mind. It's a really, solid fundamentals. Russ White, Architect. Basically, just listen to his podcasts in the car, The Hedge, and the History of Networking. This is really good stuff. I don't care where you are in the stack. If you want to know where DMVPN or BGP or MPLS came from, this is the stuff. Can't really spend too much time on it, but there's a lot of stuff. Nick Russo, Nick has a great series of network engineer to net dev resource courses, so Ansible, Git, and beyond. Great place to start. It's on Plural's site. They do cost money. Totally worth it. Like his ping course alone, I can highly recommend, because if you think you know how ping works, you don't know how ping works. So great site, great source. Moving on. Now last, but certainly not least, there's kind of an elephant in the room. We're really happy that Network Decode and NetBox are in the same conference together and sponsoring, and they're all happy. So if you're not familiar with the beef, there used to be a beef. That's been squashed. Mom and dad are moving back in together. Everyone was aware of it. Everyone has been super tense the entire conference that I've been talking to. I talked to like 20% of you, and it was like, oh my God, Mom and Dad, we're getting one Christmas, guys. We're getting one Christmas. Now, my man, Jeremy Stretch, I'm hardcore in the Jeremy Stretch camp of life because he was there for me during my CCIE, and his Packet Life blog is the greatest thing that was available to me on the internet. During my darkest hours, he had a blog post describing exactly my problem, like, 5 out of 10 times. Really great resource, packet captures, detailed blogs, and of course, creator and founder of NetBox, which we all know and love here. So can I get a round of applause for my guy, Jeremy Stretch, who's not here today. Notice me, senpai, notice me. Conclusion, don't panic. Well, maybe a little. Now, we're in a really great time to be in this space. I mean, the automation landscape is evening out a lot more than it has been. Like when I started back in 2016, 17, 16, every version of Ansible broke everything. You had it was a complete nightmare. You didn't know where to start. The resources and the books weren't there. This is now the time where you really want to be getting into this place. So there's great resources, there's great projects, there's great companies behind a lot of those projects. So you don't need to invent the wheel, you don't need to roll your own as much, and this is a really great time to be getting into this. So if you're a network engineer, don't worry, you have plenty of time, just stay focused, enjoy the resources, work with your team, augment your skill set. You're not going to carry this all on your own, you're going to need a team, communicate that inside of your organization, and get really, really ambitious. Again, legally required to talk about the LLM, AI stuff. This means we should get a lot more ambitious about what we want to do. If before you just want to allocate VLANs, it's time to get a lot more creative and a lot more excited about the possibilities. They're going to get better. They're going to get really good. I mean, that's how transformers work. If you don't know how transformers work, there's a lot of YouTube resources on them, but this is one of those I know they've been totally overblown lately and exaggerated the capabilities, but with a really good nonsense detector, an LLM is a really good tool, especially if you just can't remember that particular bash script or something like that. So, thanks for listening, guys. QR code to the slides, if anyone needs them.
All right, well,
what just happened?
Stein definitely wins the award for highest energy presentation of the day. Let's give him a round of applause for that. If you asked me for a single takeaway from that, I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to get it under 10. We've got time for a couple of really quick questions before we go to the last talk of the day. Yeah, one down here.
I don't know what he's going to ask, but remember to watch the video at 0.5 and you might pick up on something.
I really liked your analogy of the pasta for declarative versus, I'm struggling to remember the terms at this point. The question I'd had, the thought that occurred to me, the question that I had, is that what I have found in a couple of roles is I try to go into a meeting and say, this is a declarative intent. I want to run this Ansible playbook to do this declarative intent.
Yeah.
And the immediate reactions from either the change management or it's usually InfoSec, it's always InfoSec actually, is, well, what are you actually doing on the thing? And basically, to some extent, they're almost acting like the environmental health inspection wants to go into the kitchen and inspect the process. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh man, I have too many thoughts. That's kind of my problem. So the main thing with that is you got to bring them into your work. How I'm able to do this inside of my organization is we have a very much an API, an automation first driven mindset right now. Management spot, and I have it easy, but if I had a harder situation, I would try to bring in InfoSec immediately into the tent. So you get a resource from them, you explain that you must have a resource from them because they are a major stakeholder. They are going to block you otherwise. And if you don't have someone from their tent and their camp in your camp to explain, if we don't do X, Y, Z, we're going to slow down production, it's going to be a nightmare, right? We have to get them in and invested early on. We can't just go and shove stuff down security's throat because security is important. I know I love working in my lab all the time, but if it hits production, security has to be involved, change management has to be involved. That's why this Automation Council, usually, I mean, we have a member of the Change Management Council. That's the manager element in my 3-man team. And I also have a 5-man team, which is the bigger council. And we work things out ahead of time. But again, there's no easy answer to this. So I'll just go with the old CCDE, the design expert answer, which is, it depends. Hope that answered something.
It did, and that was the last question that we had time for. Another round of applause for Stijn, please.
Woo!